everybody. Thank you so much for being here, especially at the end of the day. We'll do our best to keep you engaged, and we promise that we will end on time. So I am just going to share my screen quickly so we can get ourselves started. Okay. All right. So we have a couple of slides just to orient everyone to what we're talking about today. And then we will head into some demos, and we will take questions in the chat, and if we have time at the end as well. So the presentation today is on Gooru Navigator. It's going to be an overview training session. So I know some of you used the program last year, and some of you are new. So welcome to everybody. Even if you used the program last year, there have been some updates that we've made to the user interface and also to how we present data based on the feedback we got from you all. So I am just going to go over a quick agenda for the call. We're going to do some super fast introductions. Then we'll go briefly over what is Navigator and that burning question of how am I supposed to actually use this. And then Dina and I will split the demo. So Dina will show you from the student side, and I'll show you from the teacher side what things look like. And we'll do our best to point out those updates that we've made. And again, those are based on your feedback. So a belated thank you very much for all of the feedback that you all provided last year. It really, really does matter to us. So in terms of who's on the call, I can start with myself. My name is Hannah Bonville. I am a product manager. I work on content and curriculum, and I will be with you all year in support and trainings. So I can't see any faces, so I'm just going to pass it to Dina quickly.
All right, and hello everyone. My name is Dina. I am Guru's Academic Operations Manager. I work a lot on content and metadata, which is super fun. I've been in EdTech for about 5 years, and I'm really excited to work with you all.
And then I'm not sure who all we still have on our team. Just in case, we might have Bodo, who is our sort of master of all of our visualizations of the product and messaging and the ecosystem development. And I think I saw Sachin, who's one of our amazing engineers, on the call as well. So we're all here to support you and to make sure our relationship stays strong. Because like I said, that was super important to us last year, hearing your feedback and answering questions and working with you. So as we go through this, you are more than welcome to leave questions in the chat. And whichever of us isn't talking, we'll do our best to answer them. We'll also save the chat at the end. So if we miss some questions, we'll make sure we get to you by email. So I am going to mute myself so Dina can just go over briefly what is Navigator and how am I supposed to use this?
All right, let's get into it. So before I can get into what is Navigator, I just briefly need to go over what is Gooru. So Gooru is 10 years old this year. It's a middle schooler now almost. And it was created by Prasad Pram, who was our CEO, while he was at Google. That's where the Goo in Gooru comes from. So Gooru is like a GPS for learning. We pinpoint where your learner is at the very moment they first interact with the system, and then the system maps out a route for them. Keep in mind, this is solely done by the system. You don't have to do anything. And then depending on if a student demonstrates success or demonstrates a struggle, the system can actually reroute them and give them additional materials and help them get back on track to where they need to go. So much like if you type in "take me to Starbucks" in a GPS, it's not going to take you to Dunkin' Donuts. And it doesn't matter if there's construction and the highway is closed. You'll get there one way or the other. That's exactly how Gooru seeks to function. So in addition to this, we have a lot of engineers and math and science people, and we love our data. And I'm sure as math teachers, you also love your data. So we have all sorts of data and reports available to you. And with your feedback, we have updated some of these so that the data is more actionable. So like I said, Navigator is designed to be a supplement and a support to what you already do in the classroom. It's not meant to be a replacement in any way. And additionally, it can operate without teacher input, so there's no added stress on you. We typically recommend setting a school or district level goal, such as 2 competencies, which are learning standards in Gooru speak, 2 competencies per week, or something like 15 minutes per night, half an hour a week, just some goal. And then depending on how you can implement this in any way you see fit. You could assign it as synchronous or asynchronous independent work time as homework. You could use it for small breakout groups or even entrance and exit tickets. It's a very flexible platform. And here's some fun data for you all. So we can see that we have very many global collaborators. We operate in many different schools, but the most important number on the top that I'd like to point out is we have 5 lab district schools and you are one of them. So what that means is your feedback, the feedback you give us, is directly implemented into the product. So your voices are heard louder than most, in fact. So anything you see fit, you can send to us and we will take into consideration. I think that's good for that. Back to Hannah.
Back to me. Lucky all of us. So I just shared the presentation with Trisha, and I've inadvertently clicked a link, but that's all right. We're sharing a bunch of support resources, and these will be available all the time, starting right now to all of you throughout the year. So there's a community site, which is like knowledge articles, and there's forums on there, so other teachers might have asked questions, things like that. There's the handbook that I just accidentally clicked on, which is a written, how do I do this document. So it's broken up into different tasks or things you might be looking to do, and it just gives you step-by-step with pictures how to do it. And then if you're more of a video audio person, we have similar step-by-step instructional videos on our YouTube page. So all of these are linked. This presentation is shared with Trisha, so you are welcome to click the links anytime to use those resources. If you were with us last year, you know this, but you can email us at support@gooru.org pretty much anytime. We have, Dina and I are on the East Coast. We also have team members on the West Coast, and we have team members in India. So whenever you email, you will probably get an answer pretty quickly. So if you have questions or concerns or anything, any of feedback items, you're welcome to email support, and you can also reach out to Trisha since she's well-versed in how the platform works.
Finding them.
Okay, so then also we have weekly office hours to
I think you're good to go.
There we go. I didn't realize I had been muted. I'm sorry. So we have weekly office hours that we are in the process of scheduling, and that we'll share with you, just like college office hours. So you have a question, you can pop in, ask a question, get it answered, pop back out. So it's not something where you have to stay long or be trained. It's just if you want to talk to a human face-to-face as opposed to via email, you're welcome to pop into those office hours and ask your questions. And then also, like last year, we can do Q&A sessions if you need those. And we'll have a booster training on some more like reviewing what we talked about today, but also some more advanced functionality in the fall and winter. So the goal today is to give you that high level, how do I use this with my kids in the next month level of understanding of Navigator. So of course, there are more features and things available, but we're going to try and keep it pretty high level just to show you what we think is the most useful information. So I'm going to stop sharing here so Dina can show us the student side demo. And please, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat.
All right, just let me get this up. All right, so welcome to the student experience. I hope you enjoy your stay. All right, so those of you who have been with us since last year know that students can log in using ClassLink. It's fairly straightforward. But as soon as your students log in, they're going to notice a change. You might have already noticed it. The class cards have been updated. So on the new class cards for the student side, we can see the teacher name, the class name as before, and the thumbnail. But now we have this awesome little kangaroo with a thumbs up. And under the kangaroo, that's the number of competencies or learning standards or lessons that your students have mastered from the beginning of the year till now. And then down here we have performance, which is their average performance on assessments from the beginning of the year till now, the time spent for the same time frame, and also their progress through their learning journey. So from the very first, from the first time they interact with the system to the grade level proficiency.
Oh, there is.
That line is. All right. So one other thing you're going to notice is instead of going to the learning journey like we did when we used to click into the class card, the students are now going to be brought to their brand new dashboard. And this dashboard is the one-stop shop for them to see all of their information at a glance. So they can see their Skyline here, which I'll cover in a little bit. They can see their learning journey and where they are, as in addition to their score for the entire milestone and for their last lesson. They can also see their performance overview, which shows the amount, their score on their learning journey, and also class activities, which can or cannot be assigned depending on what you'd like to do. And then you can also see the lessons mastered from the beginning of the year till now and their time spent. Underneath here, we have something that Hannah has been affectionately calling the happy box. I'm quite fond of that name. So this is the spot where we're going to call out your students' achievements and say, good job, keep going. So if they mastered 17 challenges, they'll get a little shout out right there. And then additionally, if you as a teacher choose to assign class activities, which is not mandatory in any respect, it's purely optional, those will show up right here. So I'm going to take you into the learning journey, but I'm going to take you into a different account actually. So if you click on the learning journey, you'll be brought to this page. And then on the left-hand side, you can see all of the resources. Actually, let me back up one step.
Go back. You
Here. So in the learning journey, if I go over here, this is the whole journey from the beginning till now. And I apologize for the red bar. This is a demo account. It's not a real account. But this shows all of the content from grade 2 to grade 8. This is just so I can show you some content that's more within your wheelhouse. So if I can, okay. Beta doesn't like me very much, but that's all right. So every single line your student sees is a lesson. And within each lesson, there is a collection of resources and then an assessment, which is normally made up of 5 or so practice questions. So they can click play there, or we can do what I had done before. If I hadn't clicked out, we'll be just clicking play from right here. This will be the last place they left off. Then they're brought to this new loading screen. As you can see, we've updated the study player. It's a good time now. And then we can actually see all of the resources in the collection on this side, and also any practice questions that are in here. Practice questions and collections don't count towards that score we saw before, so these are purely practice questions. And then additionally, we can see the study timer. So the students can see in real time how much they've studied that day, and a collection and an assessment. And this timer, luckily, if they go to a different tab or a different window, it'll stop counting time. So this truly counts the time spent in the program learning. And then your students can just click next, and they'll just work their way throughout. answer some questions, and then they'll be brought to a summary page where they can see what they got right, what they got wrong. And then coming up next, they're going to study this. So then they'll just click next again. And then that'll be how they move through the learning journey. All right, so that's the learning journey. I'm going to take a step back.
Testing 1 2 3, 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 testing 1 2 3.
All right. So I'm just going to take a step back, show you the Skyline quickly, just because I found that it's
What's
helpful
that?
after seeing the learning journey. So as we saw, the learning journey is organized into those lessons. And one thing to note is every single one of those lessons is a learning standard. So that's a competency. So can I click out? There, okay. So our student Skyline is made up of many different blocks. So this is a zoomed in version right here, but what we can see is all of the dark blue blocks are things that your students have mastered. So every single one of those blocks is a lesson that your student worked through and has shown proficiency. And then the light blue shows anything that's in progress. So maybe they started the collection, they didn't get to the questions yet, that's fine. It shows up as that light blue. And then gray is not started or not attempted quite yet. I'm actually just gonna refresh my page quickly. Okay, there. Sorry, my computer's fighting me today. All right, so the very first time your students interact with the system, it's going to determine where they are in this moment. And that is this white line, which we call the Skyline. So that shows what your students know now. So each of these is a domain. So we can see that your student has knowledge in all of these different lessons. It's like 2 NBT 7, 2 NBT 8. For the entire, we can see that they have all of that. But then the green line is actually grade level proficiency. So that's where they want to be. So as your students go through their learning journey and interact with content, they'll build this line up block by block. And the white line is dynamic. It'll change as they learn. So the goal is to get this white line to meet the green line. And once that happens, your students are on grade level proficiency. So essentially, this is just a different way to visualize the learning journey and the progress that your students have made. And then now I'm just going to take you to the student reports. So as you can see, we zhuzhed up the student reports a bit. It has much more actionable data. So we can see that this student, we know the teacher, the grade, and we can also see if they've mastered any competencies or have anything in progress, in addition to time spent and time spent breakdown, so by assessment and by collection. But what we can also do is change the date range. So I could see July, 3 competencies and mastered and 1 competency in progress. And also see the time changes. But the most exciting part of this report, in my opinion, is this bit. So if your student scores 80% or above, it's considered mastered, and they'll get a green block, and all of those will get listed here. So all of these are competencies that the student has mastered for the month of July. However, if a student demonstrates some struggle and scores between 51 and 79%, it'll show up here. So they can see that and be like, I should probably go and try to revisit that or try it again, maybe review it. And then areas of concern, these are the most critical things that they should try to look at. And then you can also see a couple small shout outs like we saw in the last one, the happy box. We can see mastery streaks, also if they've mastered any challenges, and we can also see if they've taken any suggestions from the system or from their teacher. And they can also download and print this report if they'd like. All right. And then on the topic of suggestions, if a student scores below 80% on an assessment, the system will ask them, do you want to try this signature collection, which is just another collection of resources that helps them, that the system will give them, hoping that it will provide a little bit more clarity and ideally help them identify what it is they're missing about that specific lesson. So if the student has any suggestions from the system, they'll pop up in here. One thing to note, though, is that the students have agency over all of this. They can choose to take the suggestion if they'd like, but they also have the option to not. Additionally, teachers can make suggestions, which Hannah will go over. And in a similar vein, the students can choose to do it or not, but you can see if they choose to do it or not. But it is just there if they would like to do so. Hannah, is there anything else you'd like me to go over for the student side?
So I do just want to mention a couple of things that I thought of as you were speaking. So I know we're talking about elementary students, and I know they are computer savvy, but in terms of the downloading the reports and printing and things like that, I do just want to bring it to your attention that we have a parent app, and we'll share instructions on how parents can download it. It's pretty easy. I downloaded it and have been acting as Dina's parent occasionally. And we have the instructions in English, and we're getting them set in Spanish as well, and a video showing how to use it. But basically, all that is to say, the parents will be able to view their students' progress. So they can view the students' page and what they're working on and their scores and all that stuff. So while we're not doubting that your students can access and download their reports, we do just want to also make it clear that we have a way for parents to also view things as well, since we know that whole ecosystem idea is important of school and home. So that was one thing. And then Dina, can you just go back to just the picture of the, like, all the learning journey from top to bottom? Yeah, perfect. So like we mentioned on those intro slides, the whole objective here is to figure out where your students have gaps. So we know that there are going to be learning gaps, just normal summer learning gaps, but also with the whole, pandemic nightmare experience, there are gaps. And so the goal here is to use this program to figure out where each student is struggling. And so the way that we're doing that is each time a student interacts with a new domain, so measurement and data or geometry, each time they interact with a new domain in their learning journey, they'll be asked some diagnostic questions. If they do really well on them, we'll ask a couple harder questions. If they don't do so hot, we'll ask a couple easier questions. So we're trying to narrow down where they are at the domain level, because we know what we've done in the past and some of the feedback that we got from you, which was really good, is that when we just give one diagnostic at the beginning of the course, it just says, okay, your student is at 4th grade math level. But as teachers, we all know, my student might be at a 4th grade math level for measurement and data, but they might be at a 6th grade level for geometry. So it's broken down now by domain. And I do just want to also make clear that there's nothing that you need to do here. Not that we don't value your role. I was in the classroom too. I'm just putting myself in that position of like, I got to get my classroom ready, and this is another thing that they're asking me to do. This can truly run without you. It identifies the students' gaps, and it fills them in and offers different solutions and resources that Dina is showing to fill those gaps in. So your role is obviously support and checking data and working with your kids and doing what you always do and being amazing about it. And this is just another way to supplement what you're doing and fill in the gaps that we know are there. So Dina, one other thing I was going to ask, can you just do a quick walkthrough of what it would look like? The student logs in and they go to the last lesson that they were working on. Just like, what does it look like when students do that?
Sure thing. All right, so I was over here. All right, so I got to the whole learning journey, the long version, by clicking this. But if your kids want to pick up where they left off, they just have to click the play button that's right here. It'll show up on whatever lesson they last worked on, and it'll just be listed right here. So they just click play, and then they will just be brought to wherever they last were. All right.
Awesome. And then, sorry, Dana, you're just gonna wish I was on. You're gonna wish I was on mute. On that little time spent tracker that we see there, we found in the past that that's a really good way for students to monitor their own learning. So it depending on what goal setting or what metric you use for your students and where you or how you're assessing whether they've achieved what they need to achieve over a specific period of time. Sometimes teachers say spend 15 minutes today on Navigator. This is a really good way for students to keep track of that themselves. So they're not reliant on you to tell them where they are or how they're doing. So that's something that we've tried to build in. And when I say we, I mean our engineers, my section, I have tried to build in is that agency piece for students. So they feel like they're in a self-navigated environment, but they also have quite a bit of control over how they learn and how they monitor their own progress. So, Dina, was there anything else, or should I get
Nope.
prepped? Okay, so I'm gonna switch over to the teacher side, and while I'm doing that, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask them, and we can answer those for you, hopefully.
I'm ready to type.
All right, so I am gonna show you the teacher side. And again, just a reminder, I know this is a lot of stuff at the end of the school day. All those help resources have all of this in it. And I know Trisha is recording this, so you'll have that access. And we also shared the slides, so you'll have those too. So this is a teacher account. I have a bunch of classes that I'm teaching. If you were with us last year, you'll remember that you have one class card per class. So sort of in the upper elementary, if you do like 2 sections of math, each section will have their own class. So you'll have probably multiple classes if you teach multiple groups of students for math, or if you teach one group, you'll have one card. So I'm just going to click on one just so I can show you what it looks like from the teacher side. So I'm going to go in here to my grade 8 math class. And the first place I am taking you is the learning journey. So this looks really similar to what you saw on the student side. So the student can each student can see their own progress. The student can click on lessons, view how they've done, all of that. As the teacher, you can see from the beginning till end where all of your students are. So this is an 8th grade math class. I can see that I've got students working on 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th grade material. So like we mentioned earlier, the goal and the intention behind all of the ways the data is presented is to, one, hopefully find one that works for you. Because many of the reports and the data presentations actually show parallel information. They're just represented differently to try and find one that works for you and that you find most easily interpretable. And then the second goal here is to make the data actionable. So in the feedback that you all provided us, one of the things you mentioned was sometimes it feels like there's too much data, which we get. Even as math science people, there is a limit. So what we've done is we've tried to surface the data that you indicated would be most useful. All of the data that have been there in the past, still there, but we've tried to bring up to the surface the things that you said would be most helpful sort of in the moment or in making those teaching decisions. So just at a high level, I can see here my students, my 8th grade math class here, are doing pretty well on the earlier grade levels of material. That's something I would hope to see. These are average scores and number of students working. They're doing okay on those middle grades, and then I see a bit more struggle here on the higher grades. So that traffic light system that was on the student side, with green being mastery, kicking butt, doing awesome, and yellow, orange, red being not so hot, I can see that here on the teacher side as well. So maybe in the moment, or in my planning period, I'm just checking my class and I can see, oh my goodness, there's some struggle happening in the 7th and 8th grade material here for whatever grade levels you're working with. Let me just peek in and see what we're struggling with. So as a blessing or a curse, almost everything is clickable. So there's always more data you can access at a finer grain size if you click in. I'm going to try to restrain myself a little bit. I love data, and so I kind of want to show you everything, but I also don't want to, overwhelm you and make you not super happy at the end of the day. So high level, I can see grade level bands of material. I can also click in just real quick and see, okay, we're doing all right, all right, all right. My eye is coming right here to this 39%. I apologize for my chihuahua. Sorry. I can see right here that there's a 39%. And so I can click in. I can see, all right, my students are clearly struggling with analyzing ratios to determine proportionality. If I want more data, I can click in. I can see how we did. So I've got 2 students that attempted this lesson, and one of them did really well and one of them not so much. So there's lots of levels of data. You have the grade band levels. You have the level at the lesson where you can just see, all right, my students aren't doing super well here, but it's passable for now. And then you can look in at individual student levels. This is also a really nice way to make small groups. So if I take a look at this lesson here, I know I have 20 students, or I'll just work on this one here. 23 students have worked on this lesson on solving problems from CL drawings. So if that's something I want to review in class today, but I want to do it in small groups, I can just click in. So let's see how those 23 kids have done. So it's all jumbled up because it's sorted alphabetically by default, but you can actually sort by score, and it just breaks the students up into groups. So I have my super high scorers, my pretty good, my meh, and then my needing help. So it's a really good way to, again, quickly identify, all right, Jose, Jenny, Monica, Simon, they're good. I can kind of assign them as like tutors to the other groups. I need to pay special attention to Maria and Domenico because they struggled the most. So again, multiple levels of data, just find one that works for you. You don't have to use the tiniest grain size of data. If just seeing grade bands is what works best, then that's what works best. So that's the learning journey page. Again, that parallels the student side. It shows you what is available to learn from start to finish. I do want to take you to my new favorite page, which is the performance overview page. And this is the one that is most heavily influenced by feedback from VVUSD teachers. So again, this is just another way to visualize the data. This is my favorite graph that we have. And you can just see really, really from a bird's eye view where each of your students is falling in terms of grade level proficiency. So again, if you are thinking, I want to pull my 5 most struggling students from math, and we're going to do an intensive math time at the end of the day, just boom, 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 boom. I can see those 5 kids. Or if you have a substitute teacher coming in and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I need to pick my sort of 3 highest performing students in math and just sort of assign them as helpers for each group. Here are my 3 highest performing students. So it's just another way to visualize and figure out where your kids are in relation to each other. I should mention along the side is just their average score. And then along the bottom is how many of those lessons they've mastered. And it follows the same traffic light system. So that's that visualization. If we scroll down a bit, we have our class progress data. So this shows at a class level how is everyone doing? So on that learning journey page, I was able to see lesson by lesson that average score. This is my whole class, every assessment, every kid took, averaging out at a 62%. I can see the average number of competencies gained per student. This number is high because we've had this demo class for like 2 years. So it'll probably start out much lower. That's totally fine. And then I can see the number in progress per student. So in progress meaning they tried it and didn't master it, or they just haven't finished it yet. So that's a little bit high too. It seems like I've got kids starting stuff and not finishing it, or starting and not mastering it. So that's something to investigate further if you want to. I think of this card kind of like my principal wants an update, what I tell them about my class. Here's 3 metrics. This is average score. This is how many competencies on average each student has gained, and this is how many are in progress. So this is just really high level class data. Like I said, everything is clickable. We have those class progress reports that we had available last year as well. These are also really good if you assign a goal for your students. Let's say master 2 lessons per week, or spend 20 minutes per week on Navigator. This is a really good way to just check that quickly at the end of the week, whether or not the student met that goal. So if it's gain 2 competencies, meaning master 2 lessons, does this column say 2 for each student? Yes, great. No, that means they didn't meet the goal. Or if you're checking for total time spent and you set the goal at 20 or 30 minutes, you could just check here. So again, it's meant to be super high level, actionable, fast, since this is the data that you indicated would be most useful. You can see closer. Let's say you have a parent coming in. Let's say I've got Simon's parent coming in and I just want to get a quick view on how Simon's been doing. I can just click on Simon and I get a quick report. I can adjust the date. I have the date going back to the beginning until now. You can set it according to any range you want. So if you just want it within the last week, last 2 weeks, that's fine. I got Simon's parent coming in. I just want to show them this. I can download and print it. There's Simon's data. So we can see all the things Simon has mastered, how many tries it took, all the way to things that are a little bit struggly and things that haven't been started yet. So these are those printable reports that you all had indicated were helpful, but you would like to be cleaner. So like Dina showed on the student side, and then also here on the teacher side, the reports are I think, much more visually appealing than they were in the past. And again, it highlights those achievements. So where there are victories for students, like mastering challenges, like which are sort of given after success, students are offered, hey, do you want to take this challenge assessment? They can say no, they can say yes. If they say yes and they master it, it's just shouted out as a victory. Or taking a suggestion is also shouted out as a victory. So all of that's included on these reports. Sorry, inadvertently downloading Simon's report. So as soon as this lets me go, I will get off the screen. Okay, so that is the progress report. So I'm just going to head back over to the performance overview. Okay, so we're back here. We've got our graph, our class level data, and then something else that was brought up in the feedback from VVUSD was how many competencies have my students mastered each? So I can see on average how many have been gained over this massive period of time. But this graph provides just a higher level, quicker overview for me to see, okay, 56% of my kids have mastered between 5 and 14 competencies. Great. Just again, high level, just knowing where your students are as a group. Another thing that was asked for was the data by milestone. So we looked at that on the learning journey where some of my kids might have 2nd grade material, some might have just 4th and 5th grade material. This just shows how many students have material in each of those grades. Sort of the translation there is how many of my students have gaps in each of these places. So 16 of my students have some gaps in 2nd grade material, 17 in 3rd grade material, et cetera, all the way through. the sort of the final report that I'll show you here is reports by milestone. So if we're coming up on a test, let's say, and I want to just assess in class all my kids on their grade 4 science or grade 4 math material, you can check to see how they're doing at grade 4 level. So by clicking on the milestone, you can see the highest competency or most challenging competency each student has mastered in that milestone. So I can see where each of my kids is. I can see how many they've mastered, and I can see their average score. So really quickly, just looking, I can see Claire, this is the highest lesson she's mastered in 4th grade material, and her average score is a 92%. Feeling good about that. So another way to just see if there's struggle in a specific area. So again, I know that's lots and lots of data and reports, but the intention there is to give you what you all indicated would be useful. So I hope you also have some time to play around after your students get rostered and just experiment to see where all these reports are so you can find out what's useful in your instruction. So I know a big thing in classroom teaching right now is that data-driven instruction and data-informed instruction. So we're hoping to support you in that by offering you the data in a bunch of different ways, finding one that works so you can make those decisions. The last thing I want to show you on this page is over here on the right-hand side. This is our opportunities for growth. In my head, I call it a struggle box. That doesn't sound super great, so we call it opportunities for growth. This is lessons and topics that my students have worked on but haven't mastered. So they've tried it but haven't mastered it yet. And in the system, by default, mastery is set at 80%. So this is anybody that attempted this lesson and scored less than 80%. So I can see as an 8th grade teacher, I've got a gap or an issue here. I've got 16 of my kids attempted and did not master the lesson on graphing proportional relationships. So that's concerning to me because I taught it, let's just say yesterday. That's concerning. So again, that action step, you can click in and see who is actually struggling. So which 16 of my kids are struggling and how actually bad were those scores? Was it like a 79%? They just barely missed mastery, or are we talking like 40s? So here I can see there's some really significant struggle going on with this concept with a huge portion of my class. So again, it just might be an indicator to me, hey, take a minute, reteach this, or take a minute, do an exit ticket on this, just to sort of like reassess and figure out what the issue is. You can go a step further if you want. So you can stop there and just know, you can actually stop at a bunch of different places. You can just read this and say, okay, clearly we've got an issue. 16 kids are struggling with graphing proportional relationships. Stop. You can also go as far as seeing which students. And then if you want to take the action step of assigning a suggestion to them, you can do that too. So if you want to assign a suggestion, meaning support resources in that area, you can do that. So anytime you click on that little orange compass, it's like you're rerouting your kids. So remember way back to the first or second slide that we saw, that little reroute on the graph, this is essentially what you're doing here. You're seeing the struggle, you're saying, hey, I can offer you some support resources, let me help you get back on track, let me help you get back on your route. So the support resources can come as collections, which is just resources. You can preview anything you want just by clicking play. And you can see, is this something I want to assign to my kids? If it is, great. If it's not, also great. And they can also be assessments like practice questions with related competencies. So what we've tried to do is we've gone through Achieve the Core and mapped out the dependencies. So we've found the dependencies for 8 EE5 and tried to identify those. So a lot of the suggested materials are actually a bit below the standard where the struggle is. And the same would be true with 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade if that's the class you're teaching. If it's a 5th grade standard, many of the suggestions will probably be hitting at like a 3rd grade level to really make sure those fundamentals are in place, because that could be the issue. So let's say I want to assign this practice assessment to my 16 kids that struggled. Again, it's just clicking the orange icon. and you are truly just suggesting it to those kids. So this suggestion will appear on the student side where Dina showed you on the right-hand side where it was notifications. It'll show up and say, hey, your teacher made a suggestion to you. And they have the option to say, no thanks, and then it stores, it doesn't ever go away. Or they can take the suggestion. And that whether or not they take those suggestions is something that's tracked on the reports that we've been showing you. So the suggestions are only made to the students that need it. So let's say I've got 26 kids in my class, the 10 that haven't attempted this lesson or have mastered already aren't gonna get the suggestion because they don't need it. So when you're making suggestions, they're really targeted to the kids that have shown the struggle and need them. So really high level review. I know I've been talking for a while and I'm sorry about that. We've got just a bunch of different visualizations of your data. We have the super high level, at what grade level is each student performing? And then also you can just identify in relation to each other where the kids are in terms of their performance and how many lessons they've mastered. You have that principals report, that high level, how is my entire class doing? And then you can also view by milestone within that 4th grade band, how are my students doing in this milestone box here. And then finally up in our corner, we've got those areas where there's some struggle and you have the opportunity to make suggestions. So last thing I want to show you, promise, is on the student locator page here. Dina showed you the individual student Skyline. So just like with the learning journey, where on the student side, they just see their own learning journey. And on the teacher side, I see everybody's. Same deal with the Skylines. The student just sees their own, but as the teacher, I see everybody's Skyline. So this is just another representation of the data. I can just look at it again, sort of at a distance at this larger grain size and just compare. Simon seems to be doing all right if I set that as the standard, and it looks like Anna is showing some struggle. She's got much less filled in, so I can take a closer look if I want to, or not. Dylan also, that looks a little struggle-ish, as does Rachel's. So let's say I do want to take a closer look. Maybe Rachel's parent or guardian is coming in for a conference, and I just want to get a better understanding of what's going on here. Same exact Skyline as Rachel can view on her account, or the parent can view if they have that parent app. So same deal. The domains are listed across the bottom. So with your 3rd, 4th, 5th grade students, obviously, these domains in those higher grade levels will still be listed, but there's the green line will be down at the bottom here. So there's no expectation that your 3rd grader is mastering expressions and equations. But for my 8th grader here, Rachel, I can see where she is in terms of that white line. And then the green line here is where she needs to be in order to be on grade level. Each of these blocks represents a lesson. So I can see Rachel is right on target for counting and cardinality. Crushed it. Every single lesson is mastered. She has reached the grade level destination. Perfect. I am concerned right now, just looking at this, by this 4th domain here, numbers and operations fractions. So she has mastered, it looks like 1 competency. Yeah, 1. So I can click in to see which one it is. And we have a long way to go between where she is and where she needs to be in order to have achieved 8th grade mastery. So again, just another way to view, if you're at a specific student level, I can say to myself, like, this is something I need to make sure with Rachel. I ask parents at home to maybe go over those lessons, or if Rachel is working independently, I ask her to focus on those fraction lessons, just to make sure she sort of builds up those weaker areas. So that is all the data on the, well, that's not all the data, but that's all the data I'm going to show you today on the teacher side. Again, I know it's a lot. I do very much hope that you find it useful and actionable. It's probably going to take some playing around time on your side, which is totally fine. And throughout the process, we absolutely encourage you to either email Trisha or us at support@gooru.org. That comes to both me and Dina, so you'll probably hear from one of us. As you explore, if you have questions about anything, please just ask. Like Dina mentioned earlier on, our goal is to make things hopefully easier for you. We're not trying to add to a workload that we already know is big. So we are just trying to support what you're already doing and all the awesome things that you're already doing with your kids by making the data a little bit more visible for you, and also by providing ways to fill in gaps that your kids might have.